Welcome everyone to episode 12 Aravaipa Trail Talk. This week we're talking all about pacers and crew. First off, what are they? When should you use them? And when should you not use them? If you don't know what a pacer or crew is, if you're new to the trail running world and the ultra running world, first off, a crew is a family or friend, someone that goes out to your race and helps you along your journey. So they will go to crew appointed spots. There's usually a few locations on any given ultra course that your crew can meet you at. That doesn't mean every single aid station, but they're typically in a 100-mile race, there might be 6 or 7 different places where your crew can come meet you. Now, this is a great place for them to, not only offer like physical support in terms of physical goods or massages or anything else like that, but also mental and moral support that is so desperately needed when you're out there on a long race. Now, when should you have a crew? I would say if you are new to the sport, I think it's great to have a support structure and a support system of people that, first off, know who you are, know your special needs, and anything else you might want just personally. There's usually a great group of volunteers that is glad to help you, but sometimes having that personal touch is something that really goes a long way in a long race. A crew can also be in charge of your drop bags and your resupplies. So this can help make your transitions through aid stations quicker. If you have more than one backpack, you can prep ahead of time what different items you want and just swap packs. I've seen that done quite successfully, not just with elite runners, but also with everyone. Every runner can benefit from a quick transition time. Now, oftentimes I recommend actually sometimes sending your drop bag with the race just in case something happens with your crew. But your crew can grab your drop bag and prep it for you. Whenever I'm crewing someone, I like to really understand as a crew person, what are their needs, what type of runner are they, what are their special dietary restrictions. It helps a lot of times to have a single bag packed for your crew that they can just grab. That way they're not going to forget anything. Sometimes where a crew parks and where the aid station is located can be a bit of a walk. So having a singular bag with changes of clothing, your shoes, any nutrition products you might need is really a great way to help prepare them to help you on race day have a good experience. Now, let's talk a little bit about the experience for the crew themselves. Oftentimes, they have even a more difficult job than you as the runner because, they're not out there enjoying the scenery and, the trail. They're in a car, driving around, dealing with traffic, trying to park. The logistics of that can actually be quite exhausting, especially for those 100-mile races that go through the night. Always be sure to take care of your crew. Buy them food ahead of time, buy them dinner, make sure they have snacks in the car, and they're ready to go and they are well rested and prepared for the day because oftentimes your success is dependent upon how they're feeling as well. Now let's talk about pacers. Pacer is someone that can join you for the last part of your ultramarathon journey. So that might be at the halfway point of the race for longer ones. Or sometimes, even 3/4 of the way through for some shorter events. Typically, you don't see pacers at ultras that are 50K in length, but oftentimes 50 miles and longer, especially if it's a harder race, like Zangray, Highline Trail 50 mile here in Arizona, they allow pacers at mile 33. So this is one runner, and they are on foot, and they can accompany you for the last part of your race. Different races have different rules when it comes to pacers. A lot of times they're not allowed to carry any of your supplies with you. Other races, such as the Leadville 100, allow what's called muling. So they can actually, physically carry your nutrition, your water, your pack, your poles, anything you might need. They're allowed under the rules to carry those products for you. So be sure to just check the rules of the race you're running so you don't get disqualified. Typically, a pacer needs to check in with the race. Some races will make them wear a bib as well, and it's oftentimes, they can also grab aid from the aid stations, whether that be food or drink. Again, just check with the local race that you're running for the specifics. All right, let's get to some of your questions regarding pacers and crews. So our first question today comes from Jen Laughlin. In your experience, what's the best advice, words of encouragement, or techniques a crew can give to her runner to get her through the lowest of the lows? I have a crew lined up to help me finish a race next year that I DNF'd this year. I need to give her note cards. That's a great question, and that goes along the lines of the moral support and your crew knowing you as a person. I think, number one, take a little bit of a look at yourself and an assessment on what motivates you as a runner. Do you like positive reinforcement? Do you like negative reinforcement? Some people really like to be told that there's someone right on their heels and they need to get right out of the aid station and keep going. Other people like a little bit more care. I think some people like to be lied to when they're out there, to be honest. Hey, you look great, even though you may not. And that can help you out. I would say have a sit-down discussion with your crew ahead of time. Really talk about your goals. Talk about what the race means to you. If you are dead set on finishing that race, find those cues and those little things that can just keep you going. If you have time on the clock, find a way to get out of that aid station. And if your crew, whatever they can do to get you out and moving, oftentimes you're at a low point and you can get through it. If your crew is happy to, whisk you away back to the hotel room, if they're tired, it's not really going to help your situation very much. So I'd say, number one, make sure your crew is happy and make sure they know what your goals are. If you're dead set on finishing this race, make sure they know that and make sure they understand that, this sport is hard. You're going to have massive lows out there. It's not going to be easy. I know that for me, even an injury or some sort of extreme pain is something that's not going to stop me from finishing a race. And your crew needs to know that. They need to know what level of suffering you're willing to go through for that finish. And then they can be aligned with your goals and your motivations out there. This question is from Nathan Ravello. What are the key aspects of a good pacer, crew member, and how do you find one? He goes on to say, I am all set for my first 100K, Javelina, and need a pacer to basically kick my ass into gear in the late stages. I'm concerned with the lack of experience in the longer distances, since as of now, I've only run a 50K. I'm set to run a 54K in June and plan another 50K in September. Is that enough? I hope with all these additional runs, I am able to gather further information on what works for me in regards to nutrition, crewing, and pacing needs. What do you recommend I do in finding a pacer? Thank you for your time. So thank you for your question, Nathan. I think you're well on your way to being on the right track in terms of preparing for your first 100K. Sounds like you're getting in several 50K or 50K plus races, some of those at night as well. So I think that's going to help go a long way. In terms of where to find a pacer or crew, I would say, if you have any friends that are runners themselves, invite them to come out. Oftentimes, the races are designed so that a pacer doesn't have to take on an ultramarathon themselves just to join you. They don't have to run a 50K. They don't have to run 50 miles. They can run sometimes as little as 6 miles. I remember Angeles Crest in 2011. I had my sister join me and she ran a 6-mile stretch and it was really cool. It was really nice to share that experience with her and to have her out on the trail with me. So I would really just ask around anyone you know who's a runner. Even if they've never run trails before, most people can handle moving over and pacing, especially since you're going to be moving slower at that point, probably struggling, and they should be able to keep up just fine. Now, Recommendations, if you don't have any running friends, I would say, if you live locally here in Arizona, which it sounds like you probably do, come on out to an Aravaipa group trail run, start to meet people. And if you don't live here, I would say the same. Join some local running groups, running clubs, start talking to people that are already in the sport and already doing this. And you should have no problem finding people. I found people in this sport are eager to be involved and would love to pace someone that is new to the sport. As far as finding a crew member for a race like the Javelina 100, it's not necessary that you have a crew. And I haven't really touched on that. There's instances where I actually prefer not to have a pacer or a crew. I've done several 100-mile races, crewless and pacerless, and it does take a little bit of the complication out of the equation, which sometimes I really enjoy. There's other times when I really like a big team with me and it really gets me through that event. But there's different reasons for running. I think part of it is the simplicity and the solitude that it offers. That's something that I really value. And so I like to mix it up. Sometimes I just don't like the crew and pacer, and I want a little bit more of a solo adventure, and I think that's perfectly fine to do. And even if you want to do that right away for your first couple ultras, there's no requirement, and you certainly can finish these events without a pacer or crew. Here we go. So Paula Olson asks, should a pacer ever take their runner out of the race? What signs of medical issues should a pacer be looking for? I think that's a bit of a tricky one. I think you really have to know your runner well, and I don't want to give medical advice here at all. I think that if there's a serious concern, you should definitely look at that, and you should weigh that into the equation. But I also caution you to make decisions for a runner that they may later regret. Wow, I can't talk. I also caution you to be careful making decisions for your runner. If they're coherent and they're just down, sometimes they can regret dropping out of a race. But I think it's just it does become kind of a fine line that you, as a friend, a pacer, a crew member, need to just kind of use your judgment and your common sense when you're out there. I think there's definitely some things that are alarming. If there's any sort of like urine discolorations, blood in the urine, serious signs of possibly rhabdomyolysis is a big concern out here. If you're keeping tabs on their hydration and their salt intake, you can kind of see what's going on there. And sometimes your runner might need to just lay down for a while, not drop right from the race. But I would also probably defer to the medical team at a race for those types of judgments. If there's someone there that, if you're really concerned and they can check them out, I would say by all means take advantage of the staff that is on site. So I kind of touched a little bit upon the signs of medical issues. And Marissa Jenkins actually chimes in, great question, and I definitely have. So she has helped to take a runner out of the race. Sometimes our runners aren't thinking clearly 70 miles in and need someone with a level head, and that's absolutely true. I know that Gordy Ainsley at the Javelina 100 this last year was running with another runner, and he had fallen, had a concussion, blood coming out of his head. He got checked out, and she basically grabbed him to get him checked out by the medical staff. He was about to head out another loop, and we need to watch out for each other out there. And I think any serious trauma should definitely be checked out. Thomas O'Reilly asks, what do you do if your pacer does not show up? Should you practice with your pacer before the race to see how it feels with them? Have them lead and follow? He also asks pacer gifts. What is good to get them? Wow. If your pacer does not show up, I would re-look at that friendship. No, things do happen sometimes. I think mentally prepare yourself. Oh, I don't know. That's just a really tough one. I think things can happen out there. Us as ultra runners, we need to prepare for everything. So think about the situation that a pacer might not show up, and who knows, that could be for any number of reasons. Maybe there was a car accident or a flat tire and they couldn't make it to your checkpoint in time, and they're trying to get to you, but they just couldn't. I think just learning to adapt to the situation, just like any other low you're going to experience out there, is the best thing you can do. Your race can still continue without a pacer, as long as mentally you're ready to handle that situation. Don't let that take you out. As far as practicing with your pacer beforehand, I think that's a great idea. If you feel more comfortable with the person you're running with, I would be all for that, especially if you don't know them very well. Going on a couple night runs and testing out running ahead, running behind, what works. Do you guys like to talk a lot? Do you want to just have a companion there, but have it be more silent? Those are all things you kind of have to ask yourself, whatever you want as the runner. And that's really, I think, what the pacer will do ultimately in respect. They're there for you, and you need to let them know what you want. Pacer gifts, absolutely. At least buy them dinner and a beer. I don't know what else you need to do, but doing something nice for someone that is sacrificing their time and their energy for you is always something that's appreciated. So I would definitely encourage you to think about that. What is good to get them? I think number one, like I said, I think dinner and a beer at least. But runners like nutrition. I think runners like running products, socks, there's all kinds of things, I think. Or a gift card to a local running shop, I think would be really awesome. Or return the favor. I know I've done that before. I've paced a friend at a summer race. They paced me back. So it's always a great way to do it. It's just scratching each other's backs. Samantha Lee asks, or states, I sprained my ankle 3.5 miles into pacing Zane Grey this year. It's not going to be a good day when you can't catch your runner because your ankle is screaming at you 40 minutes into your pacing. So what advice do you have when your pacer fails you? This kind of goes along the lines of when your pacer doesn't show up. I think you need to mentally be prepared for anything to happen. You can't prevent an injury or an illness to your pacer. Sometimes that happens. So it's really up to you to just be prepared. Again, like any other low that's out there, things happen, and how you adapt to them is really a true testament to yourself as a runner and as an athlete. So I would say if your pacer fails you, just keep going. So if you guys have any additional questions regarding pacers or crews, leave them in the comments below and we'll be sure to answer those for you. Thanks for tuning in for this week, and we'll see you next time. And now we leave you with this week's trail fail.